Okay, this is a video that I promised to do for like a year now, and I'm finally getting around to it. Today I'm going to show you how to do a neural style transfer video. So video is a little bit harder than doing just a single one-shot image. The reason for that is neural style transfer injects a lot of noise into an image, and basically if you try to just take the image sequences from a video and just split them out into frames and do style transfer just to each of those images, it'll be really noisy while it animates, and that's just because there is this noise injected into it, and then the frames won't really sync up in a good way. So you're welcome to try it, see what you think about it. But the process I'm going to show you actually uses a second machine learning model called Optical Flow, and that model basically figures out how the motion works in between frames and then creates masks for those frames. So if you use this is the library I recommend using for a lot of reasons. It's the one that I work with, and I've got some demos on how to use it. But in particular, this one is great because it already has all the optical flow built into it. If you scroll down to past a bunch of this stuff here, you'll see that there's masking capabilities, and we're going to use this masking capability to do videos. So this is already built into the repo that I forked, which is great. You'll see this sort of what it does. This is the optical flow sort of look, but then these are the masks that it uses, and you'll see that then that means that there isn't a whole lot that's actually transitioning image to image. So we're going to use this technique to create some video that is a little bit more seamless and a little more stable. So I'm going to jump over to, actually I'm going to scroll down here for a little bit more. A couple important things to know about using this style transfer library for video is I highly recommend that you actually produce some single images first. Produce some single images on single frames, just to make sure that you get a lot of your like little tweaks here and there done right. So the one thing that I always look at is style scale, which is where style scale. So this is the one that's really important to me. This is the one that I found is like the most important part to making neural style transfer stuff look good. But basically, you want to make sure you get all of your settings here right, at least for one frame before doing it on a bunch of them. It's worth noting that like when you're actually producing the video, the single time it takes to produce this to produce one frame is what it takes to produce every individual frame. So it takes 3 minutes to produce one frame, and you do that across 1,000 frames. It's going to take 3,000 minutes, which is why this stuff is really long and takes forever to produce. But it does produce a really nice video. So I'm going to quickly jump over to my library and my FTP, and just sort of show you what we're producing. So if we go over here, you'll see I've already tested a couple images here, and I'm just going to open these really quickly. So this is 512 by 512. It's also worth noting that like high res stuff is going to take you forever, so I recommend doing a smaller scale test first, making sure you like it, and then doing a high res version. But this is essentially like what I'm going to do here. I actually went through and looked at a couple different scale versions, and kind of decided that I think what I like the most is I like 0.5. That's pretty nice. I think I actually like this version best. Actually, let's open them together and look at them. So it's 0.75. That's 0.5. You know what? Let's just do... Yeah, let's do 0.5. I like some of the detail you get here. So let's do this. So we're going to do 0.5. So the next thing you need to do is inside the neural style repo, you'll see there is a thing called video input. And what you want is you want to make sure you have a single folder, and then inside that folder you have all of your steps of videos. So this is 512 by 512 PNGs. JPEGs work great too. Just make sure they're pretty high res, or like high compression, or like I guess low compression. So if I open this, it's gonna take a second. So see it's 512 by 512. Numbering doesn't necessarily matter, although it's pretty helpful if it is. So let's just double check. So 0. I mean, numbers matter when you go and output it to FFmpeg. So make sure it's all sequential. So once you have this, the next thing you need to do is jump over to terminal and actually start producing the optical flow. So I'm going to do that next. I'm inside my terminal. I'm inside of the neural style folder. If I ls, you'll see that all of the example things that I've been running over here are in here. If I ls video input, you'll see I have my walk 512. This is actually a StyleGAN video, just a latent walk that I then like took all the frames of and moved them over to this repo. So you'll see that inside this folder, this will have just the images. I showed that before. So now we need to run the optical flow command. I honestly never remember how to run this command. I always end up looking it up because there's someone here, Jean Charmant, who has just like already like sort of solved it. It's inside the issues, and he tells you exactly what command to run. So the first thing we need to do is we need to move into this video input folder. So cd video input, and then you'll see inside of here is I have the make opt flow .sh is the bash command. So we're going to do this. We're going to take this, and we're going to build up our solution. So the first thing we need to do is we need to get the location of this command. So one thing we can just do here is we can just do, let's delete this, and we can just say /walk 512. So this is what folder do I put the all the optical flow outputs into. You want it to be in the exact same folder at the exact same level as all of your images. If you don't, it's going to get messy. I've done it before. Make sure you do it right. The next thing we want to do is we want to make sure that we grab, so this is the same path. So there's two ways you could do this. Like you could write it out like this, or if I'm in an FTP application like transmit, I can just do copy or Command C, and that'll copy the path. That'll copy the whole absolute path for this, which is what I like to do. So we're just going to go over in here. We're going to delete this. And we hit return. And then what we want is we want to name the files. We want to basically like create a path for this file. So if you've never done anything like this, the %04D stands for 4 digits. So that would be 0000 or 0001. So we want something like that. Let's just take a look at how we actually built this up. So this is step, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 digits. So we're going to take this, and we're going to go back to the terminal, and we're going to paste this in here. And then what we want to do is we want to say %05D. So that just says give me 5 digits in order. So this should work now. Let's just go ahead and hit return. And you're not going to get a lot of responses back from this unless there's errors. So if it's silent, that's good. Now, what this is doing is this is using the CPU to generate the optical flow files. This takes forever. This is a really slow process because, well, partly because it runs on the CPU, but also just because it's running over, thousands of files. Now, the downside is like it takes a while, but the upside is because it's running entirely on the CPU. As soon as we have a certain number of files, like I would usually say like around 30 or 40, as long as we have 30 or 40 of these optical flow files ready to go, we can start running the style transfer model, like the style transfer video in parallel, right? So if you could almost imagine that like the optical flow is a little bit further ahead of the order in which the style transfer flow is, or style transfer files are working. That way it's like a way to like sort of run these two in parallel without like spending 3 days worth of GPU rental time generating these optical flow files. So I'm just going to come over here to, this is the folder where we should be generating our files. Yeah, and you'll see it's starting to create a number of files. So this is forward flow and backward flow. I have to be honest, I don't exactly know how this works. I just know it does. So these text files and these .flo files are what we want. So I'm going to pause this video for a little bit, and once I've got about maybe 30 of each of these, so 30 forward files, 30 backward files, and then 30 of these reliable files, then I can start to run the neural style transfer video. So I'm going to pause this for a little bit, and I'll come back when this is ready to go. So I'm back. I have about 40 files, it looks like now. So I feel like that's pretty good. One thing to check is if you run your style transfer image, like your checks and trying to set up your different parameters and whatnot, you can see how long it takes to actually produce one of those. And one thing to check is to make sure that however long it takes to produce one of those is shorter than it takes to produce one of these flow files. So usually what I'll do is I'll just go in here and I'll say, okay, this one was at 11:44. This one was at 11:45, so it takes about a minute. I know my style transfers take about 2 minutes, so that's good. Cool, so this is all set up. One thing I want to note with Terminal is if you are using Paperspace, you'll actually need to set up two different, first off, you'll need to use NoHub to make sure that you don't break your connection. And then two, you'll actually want to have two different terminal windows open. So one thing is if you're running NoHub here, you'll just want this running like in this own window, and then you want to set up a second window, and that's where you log in with the exact same credentials, and then you run the style transfer process from there. I'm in a different server setup. This actually uses Tmux. So one of the things that's cool with Tmux is you can have multiple windows. So I can just do Control B and then C, and I have a new window. And if I do Control B 0, I go back to that old one. So Control B 1 to this one. So what I want to do now is I want to go back into CD, let's see, neural style transfer. And I want to be in this folder because I want to run the neural style py. So again, because I'm in, also like I should actually do a video about Tmux because Tmux allows you to not have to worry about NoHub. So it's kind of a cool thing, but it requires a little setup and a little bit more learning. So I just haven't really done anything about it yet. But what's cool here is I don't ever need to run NoHub in Tmux. That's all you need to know. So I'm gonna get this started. So we're just gonna do neural style py. Okay, so the command for running a video is a little different. Let me just run over here, grab this guy. So neural style tf. If you're in this repo, you come down like most of the way through the page, and you'll see how to run an example of a video. So the first thing you need to do is you need to run, you actually need to pass in the video parameter. The next thing you need to do is you need to pass your video input directory. So I'm going to do this, and I want to grab video input, walk 512. And what else do I need here? Let's see, I need style images. So I know what these are. I'm just going to come back here and grab them. I want this one. And I want space. And I want this one. And I want, because of this, I also need to pass in the style images weights, which I need this. So if you don't pass this in, it's actually going to only assume one image. I actually wish I need to rewrite this so it like always auto does this, but anyway, that's that. The style scale I chose was 0.5. What else do I need from this? So inside here we want start frame and end frame. So I'm going to pick a start frame of 1, and I'm going to pick an end frame of, how many frames do I need here? Video input, walk 512. So I want 1427. So I need to go end frame 1427. The max size defaults to 512, which is what I want, so I'm going to keep it as that. First frame iterations. So this is way too high. So basically the reason that they have a first frame iteration amount is that it's for that very first frame, which I think is like just like a, it's like would assume would be your poster image. So you want your poster image to look better than your animation frames, but this is still way too high. I would never set this high. I'm probably just going to set this to 500. I'm going to set the overall max iterations for each of these to be 400. Actually, let's do it at 500. So I'm just going to do the same for each of these. What other things do I want? So I should use verbose. That sounds good. That just spits out a bunch of stuff so I know what's going on. What other things do I have in here? So I'm just going to look through some of these. So there's a bunch of video frame arguments in here. I'll do a video about like how some of this will change, but for the most part, you don't really want to change any of this stuff. The one thing I do want to change is I want to change, how does this work? So I want content frame format. So this is important because my content format doesn't fit theirs. So I want to do, it should be step, and then you do 2 brackets that says we'll put in whatever number. So I want that, and then I want to go over here. And there's one that I just added to this. So this defaults, this bracket defaults to 4 decimals. So what I actually need to do is actually pass in zfill and then 5, because my video is set to 5 digits instead of 4 digits. So this is set up for this. Just want to make sure. I feel like I might be missing something else. Let me just go through here. Let me take a look at these. You know what? I think this is good. So let's just run this. That was a lot to build up, but you sort of see how I process, like how I work through all these steps. So let's run this and see what happens. Does not recognize zfill. Did I break something here? Maybe I did. Let me just, actually, I just added this like 20 minutes ago, so I'm going to come in here and make sure that this gets put in. Neural style py, open. Let me just look for zfill. Oh, so it looks like all I did was I hacked in 5 into this. I will go back and add an argument for that, because that's going to break something pretty soon. It's definitely going to break. So I'll make a note for myself to fix that. And just make sure content frame format. So I need to add something that's called zfill. I'll do that in a minute. But anyway, zfill will work. But for the moment, we're just going to do this, and we're going to remove this. And we should be able to run this, and it should work fine. Cool, so that passed. So now this is basically processing. Because I set verbose, it's spitting out all the weights and all the various layers for this network, which is great. One thing you can also do is, I'm just going to create yet a third window. I probably wouldn't recommend this for Paperspace folks, but I'm just going to do it, and I can see how much these processes are taking. Okay, that's interesting. We're not running yet. Okay, I'm going to go back. Not yet running this process, but it will in a minute. Okay, well, clearly this is going to take a little bit longer than I expected, but now it's running. So actually now I'm going to come back to this new window, and I'm going to hit this. Interesting. It still isn't showing this process. Well, it doesn't really matter. Oh, yes, now it is. So this is taking up just under the 12 megabytes that I need for this process. So that's good. Because if we're any bigger, actually I bet this library sort of fills up the capacity, but if we're any bigger it would max out, so that's good. So I'm gonna stop this video for a little bit, and I'm just gonna come back and look at our video, look at our style frames that have been produced, and we'll take a look and see what we did. Okay, so this has been rendering for about a day now. I just let it go just for a while, just to sort of see what it would produce. You'll see that I now have a new folder in my neural style TF folder called video output. If I double click on this, you'll see it keeps the same names of the files that you're processing. And if I open this, you'll just see it's produced a number of images. Now, I could wait until this is all the way finished. I think there's like 1,400 files that I'm producing. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll often drag this folder down to my desktop and then run like an FFmpeg script on it just to produce a short video, just to make sure it's like producing what I expect it to. But that's pretty much it. So we're pretty much done here. I want to make one note about something that I did, which I kind of screwed up a little bit. One of the things that I believe I did was, let me just pull up that repo here. Oops, that's the wrong one. One thing I want to note is that I had originally written the arguments out, and I had made a mistake in one of them. So I think when I was running the script previously, I was using something called max iterations, which is, let's see, so max iterations is something that you use on the individual single image producer, and that is basically like that's how many iterations you run through to produce that single image. Now, one thing I noticed is that wasn't producing what I expected it to when I was rendering. Like, so basically, I was using that verbose argument, and again, what you see when it's verbose is that it should be outputting a number of iterations. Now, the problem was I was actually seeing it was doing more than what I was expecting it to. And the reason for that is that max iterations only works in the single neural style version without video. When you use video, what you actually want to use is frame iterations. So I'd set the first frame iterations, but I didn't set the second frame iterations. So it was actually still running on what the default was, which is 800. And I wanted that lower. So I actually I quit the script and I reran it with the frame iterations at, I believe, 500, which is what I wanted. So just one thing to note there is I did change that. There are also a bunch of other options within this, within these video frame arguments that I would say that you should just play with and sort of see. One thing you might want to look at is what the first frame type is. That'll give you some randomness or other things, so it might be worth looking at that. Anyway, this is just the scratching of the surface of what the neural style transfer video can do. But I definitely recommend checking stuff out. If you have other questions, you can drop them in the YouTube channel or hit me up on my Slack channel. That's it for now. Thanks.